1. Eurozone ready for any Brexit shocks. GS Paper 2, Effect of Policies and Politics of Developed and Developing Countries on India's Interests, Indian Diaspora. What is the context is about? Eurogroup head Jeroen Dijsselbloem said on Thursday that the Eurozone was ready for any of the negative effects of a vote by Britain to leave the European Union. We will follow it very closely and hope and trust on the wisdom of the British people as we always do, he said. What does Brexit mean? It is a word that has become used as a shorthand way of saying the UK leaving the EU, merging the words Britain and exit to get Brexit, in the same way as a Greek exit from the EU was dubbed Grexit in the past. What is happening? A referendum was held on the 23rd of June, to decide whether Britain should leave or remain in the European Union. What is a referendum? A referendum is basically a vote in which everyone, or nearly everyone, of voting age can take part, normally giving a yes or no answer to a question. Whichever side gets more than half of all votes cast is considered to have won. What is referendum question? Should the United Kingdom remain a member of the European Union or leave the European Union? Why Britain wants to leave UK? They believe Britain is being held back by the EU, which they say imposes too many rules on business and charges billions of pounds a year in membership fees for little in return. They also want Britain to take back full control of its borders and reduce the number of people coming here to live and/or work. One of the main principles of EU membership is free movement, which means you don't need to get a visa to go and live in another EU country. They also object to the idea of ever closer union and what they see as moves towards the creation of a United States of Europe. How long will it take for Britain to leave the EU? The minimum period after a vote to leave would be 2 years. During that time Britain would continue to abide by EU treaties and laws, but not take part in any decision-making, as it negotiated a withdrawal agreement and the terms of its relationship with the now 27-nation bloc. In practice it may take longer than 2 years, depending on how the negotiations go. If the UK left the EU, would it be able to rejoin in the future? If so, the UK would have to start from scratch with no rebate, and enter into accession talks with the EU. Every member state would have to agree to the UK rejoining. The mechanisms for rejoining the EU are set out in the Lisbon Treaty. According to Article 50, if a state which has withdrawn from the Union asks to rejoin, its request shall be subject to the procedure referred to in Article 49. What will happen if Britain exits the EU? If Britain exits the EU, it could impact the economy. While the long-term impact of this move has not been estimated, in the short run, it could trigger flight of capital from Britain, compound its current account deficit problems, weaken the pound and increase inflation. The flight of capital could lead to the dollar strengthening in the short term. The exit of Britain could embolden political parties in the opposition in other EU countries to ask for a similar vote to exit the EU. This could have a cascading impact on global financial markets. How Brexit will this affect India? If the global financial markets are affected by the Brexit, Indian markets are unlikely to be insulated. For Indian companies operating in Europe, especially in the UK, there could be a fair bit of uncertainty with the pound expected to weaken. The bigger problem will be a likely sell-off in emerging markets, which India is part of, mainly on account of a strength in the dollar and aversion to riskier assets. It will heighten global volatility, thereby impacting capital flows, and in medium term we will most likely be impacted through currency exchange. India has a substantial trading corridor with the EU. Any material depreciation of the euro-pound could lead to increased headaches for India in a sluggish export environment. As per The Guardian, there are more than 800 Indian-owned businesses in the UK, with more than 110,000 employees. If Britain exits, Indian exporters will have to adhere to two separate standards which will increase costs.